Welcome to In Touch Crime Beat. I'm Officer Don with Fayette Commonwealth's Attorney Ray Larson.
Out of jail, okay? Don't mess up.
And those are the people, those repeat offenders, the ones that go to prison. And
They say we're the #1 rated radio show in the whole country.
so you see the erratic driving, you go through these field sobriety tests, but you got no characteristic odor of alcohol. What do? One of the things they do is this, they look at the pupils in your eyes, the black part of your eye, and if it's constricted real small at night, where in the dark,
Where it should be open,
wide open, they should be dilated. Well, that's an indicator of the presence of drugs on board. And this training went through what drugs does that indicate?
Yeah, now that training I never had.
Yeah, well, see, that's the point now. And this is the kind of training that we're having to go through now as we see alcohol-related DUIs dropping and drug-related DUI, drug driving cases increasing. So that's the training.
One of the things that I had in a case one time was I pulled someone over. I smelled alcohol and marijuana. With the BA, he blew like a .03, very low on the BA.
Now, wait a minute. Under that, would you, if you didn't detect any marijuana, would you have arrested him?
Well, I said BA. You're talking about the PBT.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
no. If I get if the PBT indicates alcohol present.
No, wait a minute.
But then the person fails the other field sobriety test, and then I also smell marijuana. Yes, I would still go and I would assume that the person's under the influence of something else, even with the training that I had prior. This person, though, because of the alcohol, I assumed it was an alcohol impairment. Get him down. He blows really low, and he's looking at me and smirking. So I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to have to ask you to take a second test, a urine test, which I did, and then we sent it off. But I remember at trial, what came up with that was it detected marijuana, but there was a question as to when he smoked it, because his defense was, well, yeah, there's marijuana in my system because I smoked it, 3 nights ago, but I didn't smoke it that night. Please believe me. He looked at the jury and said that to him.
Well, and with the urine test, if that's what you got, a urine test, you got marijuana, THC metabolites, and he could be accurate. You see, and that creates a reasonable doubt. Now, what now needs to happen is a blood test needs to be taken, because the THC gets out of your system and goes into your urine. Now, if it's in the blood, that means it's been consumed recently. You see, that's where you lost that.
And I guess the reason for the blood test issue is it's like you said, up to this point, if I had sent the blood out to the lab and asked for them to give me a marijuana level, they'd have said, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And part of that, I'm sure there's logistics involved and there's expense involved too in the lab's defense here. The urine test is probably cheaper and easier to do versus blood. They're going to have to increase their budget there. We know.
You want me to tell you what the deal is?
What is it?
This goes back to my whining and belly aching about our governor, our Secretary of the Department of Justice, and our legislature underfunding the crime lab. They didn't have the instruments necessary to do it because the legislature, in their rush to release prisoners, thought that's far more important than funding the tools prosecutors and police need to enforce the law. Finally, they realized, hey, we better do something about this, and the crime lab went out and got some sort of a federal grant. But that's ridiculous. The legislature ought to fund the tools necessary to protect the safety and security of our citizens, and they didn't. They let it deteriorate to the point that here we got alcohol driving going down, drug driving going up, and crime lab couldn't do anything about it until they got this instrument. Now they're starting to do it.
Is there any argument from the defense side, successful argument, that a person under the influence of marijuana is not as dangerous as a person under the influence of alcohol? I've heard that before.
Yeah, well, that's not what that's one of the things this training has told us, is no, if anything, they can, their perception is far worse if they're under the influence of marijuana. And you know, Greg Davis, who's a pathologist, toxicologist, all sorts of things over at the University of Kentucky, said I'd always rather ride with somebody under the influence of alcohol than under the influence of drugs.
I guess that's the question, whether or not you want to wrestle a grizzly bear or fight a tiger. Either way, you're hosed, right?
Yeah, well, you're eating.
Either way, it's not going to turn out good. Do I
That's
ride
right.
with a drunk driver or someone that's drugged? Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Well, this training will obviously help. The fact they have that equipment is going to make a tremendous difference. What if somebody refuses these tests? I mean, what if you get the guy, I had a guy one time, this is very funny, put him in front of the toxilizer, and I'm like, okay, I need you to blow on this. You'd have to read a consent card to them,
Right.
tell them they don't have to do it, they're going to lose their license if they don't, and whatever. And he looked at me and he says, well, don't I have a right to make a phone call? And I said, yes, sir, you have a right to make a phone call, but we need to do this first. Why? Well, I want to make my phone call now. And I said, well, I can't let you do that. And he said, well, I want to call now. I said, who do you want to call so bad? He goes, your mama. That was funny.
Yeah.
It was funny.
I guess you had to be there.
So you had to be there.
Yeah.
But anyway, he didn't take the test. So that meant that he lost his license. I guess then it was 6 months that you lost.
I don't know
how
if
it works.
I don't even know if it's 6 months anymore. Maybe 45. I don't know.
But back then, if you really had the incentive to take it, because if your license was automatically suspended if you refused, and you still went to trial for DUI,
Mhm.
and we were able to tell the jury that you refused this test.
But that's where the evidence of your impaired driving comes up.
Problem is, back then, if your license was suspended and then you were caught driving, the police officer would arrest you for operating on suspended. You didn't want to drive around on a suspended license. Well, now, because of some changes in the law, cops aren't really arresting for operating on suspended now. So what happens is you get pulled over, there's not much of incentive. You're going to get a ticket. And that's a problem.
Tune into the following stations to hear the full episode.